Hey everybody, and hope everybody's doing great as usual. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't yet, subscribe for more content and give it a thumbs up if you like the video. So, uh, any ideas and comments, of course, as always, please let me know. I've been having some great discussions and there have been some great ideas too, and I really love this sort of thing, learning and being able to share and discuss this with people. So, thank you. It's much appreciated. Um, so for this video, I wanted to talk about two concepts, and they are the first one is the Akashic Records is what they're called, and also the second one is the concept of the ether or an ether, and they're very much connected and related. So I just wanted to talk that through a little bit, and in just a moment, I'm going to show you the Wikipedia pages that kind of explain the idea, and also there's different schools of thought around these sorts of things as well, but coming from an existential standpoint, to understand, all existence and how things work and why. I think it's always important to, when understanding something, to define it as much as possible, so you know what it is and what it's not, and you can speak about it correctly and truthfully in the proper context. So the idea, I don't know how far back the idea of the Akashic Records go as a term, using those two words, Akashic Records. It only goes back a couple hundred years, I think. But the idea goes back much further. What the idea of that is simply that everything throughout all existence is being recorded and preserved at all times, for reasons of preservation and data, and to make sure that we are able to evolve this knowledge as well. So that's the general idea of the Akashic Records, basically a database of everything being mapped and recorded and preserved at all times. And the ether, the idea of that is, and it's used interchangeably as well, and I think I use that too when I think about it, just as the idea of, when I refer to it, it's just the idea of a substance that permeates everything. In other words, that is everywhere at all times, period. And there have been ideas or ways or attempts to try to map or define these sorts of things. The idea has been around a really long time. Physically, there's no such thing as one quality or one substance that permeates everything. But non-physically there is, and that's actually a great definition for the ether. There is a field of energy that is placed everywhere, non-physically, and it's able to preserve all physical and non-physical everything. And this is what actually creates the ability to record everything, and therefore generates the Akashic Records. So when you hear these terms, that's what they refer to. And I'm going to show you the pages now and the definitions around there. They are really, really great, and this will offer a great starting point to understand this sort of thing. And then I have a couple thoughts around the existing or current definitions to help kind of complete the holistic picture or idea of exactly what they are. So, all right. So, okay. So here is we got a couple different Wikipedia pages I want to show you, and to break down these two concepts. So again, Akashic Records, and then the ether. So, the Akashic Records is, I didn't realize they were this new, actually. Looks like it started, it says in here somewhere between 1830 to 1891 is when the term started becoming used. So, but I think it's because it comes from, right here's where it says it, because it comes from Sanskrit, and I know that's a pretty ancient language. So maybe that's where I got it from. But it looks like the term or the idea itself, and maybe it existed prior, but the words Akashic Records conceptually, using this kind of language and this definition, started rather with these two religions, theosophy and anthroposophy. So theosophy was started by a Russian woman named Helena Blavatsky, and it may sound familiar. I've heard that name before too. I'll have to do. I definitely know I've come across it before. So, but she began or started this religion, and Rudolf Steiner started anthroposophy. That's this guy right here. Edgar Cayce, I've heard of him too. He is clairvoyant or medium. So they mentioned him here as well. Not sure how he fits into. He probably had something to do with it too. But either way, that's them. Rudolf Steiner kind of looks like the guy. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. He looks like the guy from The Lion King. I don't know if anybody's seen the first Lion King, Jeremy Irons, but he reminds me of that guy. He was in Die Hard. I don't know if anybody is as old as I am, but I saw the first Die Hard when I was a little kid. This guy here. See, if you look at his face, and then see that guy? Especially this picture. He looks like a younger version of that guy. Okay, sorry about that. So I just thought I had to point that out. I thought it was kind of funny. So the Akashic Records, the idea behind it is that everything is being recorded or captured at all times. So the definition here that you'll see is it's a compendium, which simply means a comprehensive collection of information and analysis pertaining to a body of knowledge. So that's what it is. It's basically a body of knowledge, and it's ongoing. So everything throughout existence is constantly being recorded, and we'll get to recorded and preserved, basically like data. It's one big database, and we'll get to that in just a moment why that's done. But that's the main reason, like with anything, to not only preserve information, but to evolve it and further understand it and make use of it, for example. So, but this mentions it's all universal events, thoughts, words, emotions, and intent ever to have occurred in the past, present, or future in terms of all entities and life forms, not just human. So a simpler way to put it would just be everything, absolutely everything. So remember, everything has a duality. So it can be defined by its opposite. There's hot and then there's cold. There's light and dark. One of the fundamental realities or concepts rather of existence is physical, non-physical, and that's what everything falls into, one or the other or both categories. Period. Absolutely everything. And that's covered by all of this, universal events. Our thoughts are non-physical, of course. Our words can be both. We speak our words, or we write them down physically, or we think them in our heads. So all of this falls in within that duality on that spectrum: physical, non-physical, or both. Intent is interesting. So I'll have to. Our emotions here, of course, are physical too, but we store them in our memories and minds as non-physical memories and experiences that we can recall. So this also has that duality of both. Now, intent is interesting. I don't know if intent, I'll have to look more into this. I read a great book, probably about 15 years ago, called The Power of Intent by Dr. Dyer, I think. And it was a really great book, and I'll have to reread it to kind of remember what it was about. But intent, obviously. But that's a curious word to put in here, because I don't know if intent is a quality. Is it like hot or is it cold? For example, can it be defined and measured, or is it a combination of qualities? Because if I intend to eat, my mind's like, I'm hungry, and my body feels hungry. So my mind and my physical feeling, everything's kind of working together. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go find something to eat. So is it a combination of different concepts coming together, or does it have its own measurable quality that we can call intent? I'm not sure how they measure that, but that's a real interesting thought. I'll have to look more into that. I like that idea. I think it's pretty cool. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating thought right there. And then to kind of finish the definition here that these two religions use, all these things ever to have occurred in the past, present, or future in terms of all entities and life forms, not just humans. So one thing to note here, so the future has not happened yet. I know it sounds pretty literal, because on one hand it is actually. So the present moment is constantly unfolding, period. Everything's on a timeline. Everything's on a forward-moving timeline that we can map everything to. I mean, even here in the on Earth, we have different ways to tell time, and but it's always forward-moving. So we're in different time zones, but we're always following a linear form of time. The future just quite simply has not happened. Everything has happened. There's the unfolding present, and as time immediately as everything continues to unfold, the present immediately becomes the past. But the future can never be reached, literally. So we can put together the data to predict what may happen. We can create the illusion or environment. Like, for example, if we have enough data, we can create the sensation or surroundings that we have traveled into the future, but we really literally haven't. So we're creating that based on data from the present and past. So the Akashic Records can't really capture what has yet to happen, but we can create models and environments using this data, and that's what makes it so useful to predict the future. So this being said, this is a great definition, and it's right. There is something that records all this stuff. Just to kind of put a little bit, just to kind of summarize though what we've read so far, everything is captured physically and non-physically at all times. It's to preserve and also understand and evolve the data, just like we do down here on Earth. But it's the present and past. And to kind of explain like how preservation comes into play. Like, for example, say you have a medical condition and you start to lose your memory down here. Well, one fact is that when we die, everybody wakes up made whole. We are back to perfect health, both mental and physical, and anything we went through, the memories are still there. But once we wake up in the afterlife, we are in a state of pure calm and love and in peace. And then we're able to use the data from the Akashic Records to review our lives and understand it, and then basically, continue our life in the afterlife. So if you forget things while you're down here, for example, this data, that's why it's so useful. These memories can be put back, and that's what I mean by made whole. Everything. You're healthy 100% in every sense of the word, and now you're in a state of enlightenment and peace, intellectually too. The information you have access to helps you fully understand your life, and you can review it and then just simply move forward. So that's one way that this is useful. If, for example, same thing, like let's say a planet gets destroyed, all this data, everything is carried over seamlessly to the afterlife. Everything in this physical universe is constantly being recorded, and this is what it's used for. It's used to put things back. It's used to make the transition seamless from physical to non-physical. It's used for those reasons in the afterlife too. So like if something happens and say for whatever reason, something goes missing in the non-physical universe, so to speak, too, the afterlife, the spiritual realms, the data is there to help put it back to. And of course, like with any body of knowledge, it can be continuously evolved and made better, which it is. So that's what the Akashic Records are, a holistic keeping of everything. Everything has its continuous at all times, all the time. And life is considered sacred and precious. This all evolved out of nothing. That is well understood. And if we lose any of this, or for some reason everything gets destroyed, we need a way to be able to preserve ourselves, period. And physical evolution and even non-physical evolution in the afterlife came from pure, space and nothing, and evolved. And there's always the chance of if we didn't preserve all this and keep this sort of data and continue to evolve it and have it just in case we need it, the alternative is that, well, what if something happens and everything gets destroyed? Everything goes back to zero, and then who knows how long it would take for something to evolve again or happen to, and we may never be alive ever again. It's just it's for the preservation of all there is, period. So and that's kind of that's the context that I use it in as well. And I think this is great how they had these religions that are like 200 or 300 years ago, probably even prior to. I'm not quite familiar with that, but this term again came up 200 or 300 years ago, I think it said. And it's great to understand these sorts of things because this is a very real thing. And when I ask for information too, when I have these conversations, when I'm doing channeling sessions or communicating, this is how everything is known. So we don't have access to all of this at all times. And I've done videos on that, for example, like if I'm at the grocery store and say there's a guy who's sick or a woman who's pregnant, I can't ask my spiritual guides, well, can you guys check the records and see, what the gender of her baby is? Is she having twins? Or can you guys check and see what, why he's sick? This information is preserved and privacy is taken very seriously. So someone in the afterlife may have access to this information, like say the guy's wife who died and happens to know what his sickness is, or the woman's husband who may have died who had a test and knows what the gender of the children are, but you have to have permission. It has to go through specific channels. So all information is not all freely available to everyone at all times. There's rules around that sort of thing. I think that's important to note as well, to point out. So this brings us to the next concept, the ether. And this is actually what constitutes or makes up this field of energy that does capture everything, which is really cool. So the ether, okay, let me leave this up. Here we go. So if we go to, here's the ether. You can look this up on Wikipedia. It's the idea, generally speaking, and people use it interchangeably too, from my experience, but the same underlying idea that there's something that connects everything. There's a field of energy that makes us all connected, which is pretty true, actually. So there's the scientific definition. There's the mythological. There's also the philosophical as well. Right here they get into. So it's the same idea that's kind of carried throughout different fields of knowledge or bodies of knowledge and schools of thought. It says right here with physics, they tried testing this, but they could not find the presence of such a medium in the Michelson-Morley experiment. So they're just speaking about one particular type of ether or field, I think. Luminiferous, something that is conducive to or able to carry light. Like right here, I think it says, providing a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum. No evidence of presence of such a medium was found. The idea of an ether is real, which is cool. And there's two ways to look at it. I was talking to my guides, spiritual guides, and other people too in the afterlife, which is cool, over the past couple of years trying to understand this. And there's two ideas of the ether. So there's the actual ether, this field that is actually laid out in order to preserve all life, to create the Akashic Records. And it's non-physical, because remember, everyone in the afterlife exists of non-physical energy in the spiritual realm. So that form of energy is on what you might call the mental planes. When we think and that sort of thing, that's mental energy or non-physical energy. So now the actually, okay, I'll get to the other part here in just a moment. So there's two really ways to look at the ether. The very field of substance that they're trying to identify here, which is real, but there's also a conceptual field of all connected energy. And here's what I mean by that. So space is eternal. Space goes in every direction, no matter what. When you start with absolutely nothing, the concept of space is the very first concept that we have. And that's integrated with time. That's what they call the space-time continuum, because space goes in all three directions. It has, height, width, and depth. It goes everywhere. And then the fourth element being time. So that's what they call the space-time continuum, because you can literally go in any direction forever and ever. And if you can do that, conceptually speaking, it's true, and literally true, then you can also use time to track in any direction that you go forever. So in other words, time is eternal, and so is space. And they are inherently and fundamentally connected, no matter what, for that reason. And if you think about it, that's true, because that's the first concept we start with, space. So let's say you're just moving and it's just you in like all outer space and there's nothing else. It's interesting to think this over, because you're like, well, how is that possible? So, well, if you keep going, there's nothing to run into, because we're only dealing with one concept, space. If you bump into something, now we have a second concept. It could be density, dense space, or thicker air, that sort of thing. But it's a new concept. It's a new form of space. So the more concepts, you could bump into maybe a planet or a rock eventually or something like that, but the point is, no matter what, the concept begins with space in every direction until more concepts evolve out of that. So, and if you think about it, that makes sense, because if you bump into something, say it's just thicker space, but it still looks like, black outer space too in every direction that you go, it creates like a boundary. So you bump into a boundary. Well, what's on the other side of that boundary? It can't, it either goes forever or it stops. And if it stops, what's on the other side of it? So you always have the underlying idea of space. It's forever until something else happens. The conceptual idea of space is true. Like, for example, I'm sitting in my chair, my TV's over there. Now there's the air. I mean, literally, I'm separate than my television. We're two separate things. But conceptually, if you want to kind of liken that to a connected field of energy, you could, because I'm breathing the same air. My television's too far away for me to breathe on right now, but I'm breathing the same air that the television exists in. Like, here's my fingers, and they have boundaries. They go to a certain point until it, runs into air outside itself. So, and then, there's my couch. My couch is in the way, but we all share the same space. And that is, so conceptually speaking, everything is connected. Maybe not literally, like I was saying, because, it is literal. Even the boundaries are what connect us, if you think about it. So the air between me and my television, it is a boundary, but that boundary touches the television and myself, and therefore, we're connected through it. So there's always the idea of, it's that fundamental underlying idea of space that connects everything, even though we may be separate from things within the same space. So, but that's not what the ether is. It's not the conceptual idea of everything being connected or eternal space. It is, when used, and this is important to point out too, because conceptually everything is connected, but there is no field joining everything. Okay, sorry, I just had to make sure that was right. I'm back, because I remember having this conversation before. I just want to make sure that I explain it right. There is no conceptual field connecting everything. It's the idea of space itself. But there's no one quality or one substance that permeates everything naturally on its own, that is. Now, you could call there is actually something that joins. There is one substance that is everywhere, but it's been placed here. And that's what creates the Akashic Records. And I think that's pretty cool. So the ether, this idea of a field that is non-physical, and it was literally placed everywhere. And it's, I'll explain this process too in just a second here. Let me click off of here. So this is a very real concept uh, as far as an actual quality or substance of something that goes beyond simply the connected nature of everything, like the couch and television. There's very, very much something everywhere that we are within. And I'll talk about that here in just a moment. All right, so there's the information on Wikipedia. It'll give you a good start. You can read the information on there, and you can also Google those terms and do some more research on it. It's pretty interesting. But just to summarize, Akashic Records, a continual preservation of all data, an ongoing database of knowledge that preserves everything at all times, forever. And then there's the Aether. There's the conceptual idea of everything being connected, and then there is the actual reality of a field that permeates everything. But it's nothing natural. There's no underlying substance that naturally permeates everything, just like we were talking about. So eventually you have space, and then we have rocks, and we have objects, and that sort of thing. But there's nothing, the materials and the underlying qualities of such things change within that space. So the concept of space, even though it's everywhere, has different densities and forms and shapes and sizes and all that sort of thing. Now, when I talk about the Aether, I mention it as a little bit of both, actually. I use it interchangeably. This conceptual idea and the reality of an actual quality or substance that is everywhere. Now, what's interesting, now the reason they couldn't find it really in these experiments is because it is a field, it is non-physical. And it's placed there by the afterlife and the spiritual realms. So just to kind of recap, all existence is split into physical and non-physical. There's simply two halves, so to speak, of existence. Physically, evolution, everything came from evolution. Because everything has a starting point, if you think about it. Data and knowledge and awareness doesn't go back forever. There has to be a starting point where there's an awareness of such things. So evolution occurred in both the physical universe and the non-physical realms. Now, all physical space has a duality of this eternal idea of space and time actually is both physical and non-physical. So everything that's physical has a non-physical counterpart. It's just the nature of existence. So my hat right here, it's physical, but existing in the same space at the same time is an exact non-physical version of it at all times. The two are one and the same. And this is exactly how those in the afterlife can preserve everything physically. Because if you think about it, they're two separate realms. Yes, they do work together. My non-physical mind tells myself to raise my physical hand. So the two are very much joined and connected. But when we hear our thoughts, we're not using our physical ears. We're using our non-physical senses. So there is a connection, and they work together, but they are very much separate in some aspects as well. So that is how they're able to preserve everything. This massive field, and it is meant to be as simple and non-intrusive as possible. It's kind of used like an imprint is a great way to look at it. And it has to be everywhere, because observing at a distance, you might miss something, plain and simple. But if there's a field everywhere, if something manifests in that field and then disappears, you now have an imprint of it, and you're able to capture it that way. So it has to be everywhere at all times, and it is a non-physical field of clear energy, and that is it. It is the most simplified substance of clear energy that allows everything that is in it to be recorded and preserved and measured and everything like that. And it is continuously being there. A net is being cast out in every direction, literally as fast as possible at all times. In other words, they've developed over there this the idea of well, basically we have to explore everything at all times. The space is eternal. There's literally no time to waste, but there's space, eternal space to cover at all times. So no matter how fast you can go, this net is being cast everywhere. So in case evolution starts to occur way over there, even if it's like 1 billion years from now, whether it occurs in the physical universe or in the non-physical field of energy, it will be captured and preserved and monitored and kept whole, and that sort of thing. So this ether is constantly being cast out in every direction as fast as we can possibly go, and just in case, so we can preserve everything that there is and catch everything that is yet to happen. So that is what the ether is, and that's what it's used for. And it's a really cool idea if you think about it. So, and remember, that's exactly how they preserve everything physical. Because if when you're communicating, like with your psychic abilities, and say you're speaking to someone or listening to them, it's not physical at all. They can't see you because they don't have a physical body anymore. Just like I was saying, you don't hear your thoughts with your physical ears. So, how exactly do you communicate with one of your loved ones, or like an angel or a spiritual guide? You use your same spiritual ears that you use your thoughts with, that you listen to your thoughts with, and your five senses can be used that way too. So, because if they just showed up physically, it'd be easy. Everybody could talk to them. And everybody could speak to them and see, and everything would be great, a lot easier, probably a whole lot different. But when we die, our physical self eventually, goes away and breaks down and dies and everything like that. But our experiences and our mind and our everything else has been mapped our entire lives and our memories, and that's what's preserved. And that's how they see us too. So they can't see. There's an interesting thought too, like angels and like your lost loved ones or friends, someone that you may have known down here that's in the afterlife. When they show up to speak with you, they don't see you physically. They're non-physical, and they can see you, but they're seeing the non-physical copy of you. So they are literally your physicality is completely. They can't see you or hear anything. It's the same thing, because since we have that seamless duality existing at all times, that's how they're able to see and speak with us. And it is this non-physical field of energy that preserves everything. Even those experiences, when they show up and communicate, everything's captured for preservation and knowledge and that sort of thing. So I think that's maybe a good stopping point here, and a good way to describe those two concepts. And hopefully you found it really interesting. I sure did, and I think it's a fascinating idea, and it kind of gives the full context of what the Akashic Records are and what the ether is, and where they come from, and exactly who maintains it. Because if you think about it, this sort of thing has to be maintained by someone, and it is. It's done by the afterlife. The spiritual realms they far predate evolution in the physical universe. And luckily over there, they were able to realize this duality of physicality and non-physicality, and have a perfect process in place now to preserve all life from the physical universe into the non-physical universe. So that kind of sums up the process and the terms right there for Akashic Records and the ether. So I hope that was helpful and useful. And if you have any thoughts or ideas around that, definitely please let me know, or ideas for other videos too. I definitely love learning about this stuff and sharing it and discussing it. So once again, thank you for watching, and much appreciated. And please take care. We'll see you in the next video.